Hi. Great. So yes, I'm a professor in the School of Architecture, and in my writing and teaching and practice, I sort of work on unfocusing eyes to see not only buildings with shapes and outlines, but the almost infrastructural matrix space in which buildings are suspended. It's not an infrastructure of pipes and wires under the ground, but almost something like an operating system for shaping the city. It's coded with laws and econometrics and informatics and global standards and formulas for making what I've called repeatable spatial products, all the sort of formulaic products that you know very well. It's the cartoon of skyscrapers and turning radii and malls and resorts and golf courses and franchises and parking lots and airports and airport lounges and free zones. All of that stuff that, far from hidden, is actually pressing into view and looks the same whether it's in Texas or Taiwan. And it's all telling emotional stories about Arnold Palmer golf or Beard Papa cream puffs. And this is actually Inner Mongolia. And some of the most radical changes in the globalizing world, it's easy for me to say, are being written in the language of this almost infrastructural matrix space. It's become a kind of de facto medium of polity. And the space is currently coded by the org men of the marketplace and World Bank yes men and 28-year-old McKinsey consultants, some of which have probably graduated from Yale, and management, quality management specialists. It's a place of really stealthy politics, labor abuse, environmental abuse, and it's a secret weapon of some of the most powerful people on earth. Sometimes, though, it seems like it's a secret weapon that's best kept from those of us who are trained to make space. So, however unlikely it may seem, I'm arguing that this space potentially brings to our art another relevance and even another set of aesthetic repertoires and another sort of fortified aesthetic repertoire with another set of political capacities. And for many of the most interesting thinkers in both the arts and the sciences, who are also shifting focus from object to matrix, and who are also looking for a more complex context in which to maybe question some of the assumptions of their supposed science, or some of the master narratives or methodologies, I'm trying to offer this matrix space as a kind of fresh test bed of evidence. So I teach a university-wide lecture course, graduate and undergraduate, for all the disciplines, on the spaces of globalization, and I'm trying to demonstrate the importance of spatial studies and spatial variables in everything from health to law to global affairs to business to the arts. So for architects, we're largely trained to make object forms, buildings, and assess them for their outline and their shape and their silhouette. And it's a perfectly reasonable artistic choice just to want to make that object form. But I've been asking, what if the world could use from us form making in another register or gear? What if there's also an artistic curiosity about not objects form, but active forms that are almost like bits of code in this spatial operating system, little bits of code that determine how objects will be organized and multiplied and circulated. And precisely because it's one of those moments where we're so focused on the ubiquity and in some ways the political treachery of digital information systems, I'm trying to look at space itself as an information system. As Gregory Bateson would say, a man, a tree, and an axe is an information system. So I'm asking, what if we actually know how to hack the operating system with the equivalent with the spatial equivalent of a software, an active form or interplay that's manifest in the heavy bulk of urban space? And what if this more formulaic matrix space, in that formulaic matrix space, it may be more difficult to design an object form that's meaningful, but maybe even easier to design an active form that's meaningful, that might leverage all the existing multipliers and switches in that matrix with amplifying effects. So active forms shape not a single object, but a stream of objects or an interplay. And they might even allow us, if you're making object forms, that usually results in the addition of building. But with active form, it might even allow us to think about subtracting building. Not only putting the development machine into forward, but putting it into reverse. Especially in places where there are sensitive landscapes, or floodplains, or distended suburbs. And it was that kind of a subtraction protocol which was being played out as a kind of game, almost like a reverse game of Go in the sort of Beinecke-Lux projections. A reverse game of Go where one's working not to make walls and solids, but to make clearings. So active forms, what if they also tutor not only an expanded repertoire of form making, but also an unorthodox approach to political activism? What if they can find the politics, the potentials for violence or creativity that's actually latent in spatial organization, and I would argue underexploited in governance? So this is a David and Goliath story where David is sneakier, where David would never bother to kill Goliath if he could manipulate him into doing some of the work. So as we look at some of this is the urban porn that's used to promote the infrastructure space that I study. And when you look at that, maybe you can imagine a sort of shrewder, cagier counter to the stealth of global politics. Maybe one that we think we're supposed to be so rational, and this is a sort of a cast iron world of law and global affairs and so on. But I'm rehearsing a way of routinely deploying the irrational, the discrepant, the sly, in a way that's often, it sounds contradictory, but often more practical, and in some cases more vigilant than righteous opposition alone. So the work offers very few prescriptions. In some ways it's less about knowing that and more about knowing how. But with these active forms of interplay, maybe a snaking chain of moves can worm into this matrix space and gradually generate leverage against intractable politics. So if infrastructure space is a secret weapon of some of the most powerful, I'm arguing that two can play at this game. Thank you.